That neat and perfect thing her mother always wanted her to be. But it always came back to how. Not how to become, but how to forever be that thing. With all the swerves and wild twisting that the day could bring, how? That question had never been sorted out clearly for Aya. Her mother would tell her to get proper rest, to eat, to study, and to be on time. But she never told her how to make sense of the confusion and all of the hurt stacked up inside her, stacked and cluttered, chaotic and dusty. As much as she could then, Aya relied upon the judge, her probation officer, and even her mother when they said, "Just follow the rules." "Please," her mother would plead, "just do what they say." Which Aya did. But it didn't help that no one ever said what to do when the rules didn't make sense, when the rules were stupid. That's where Aya had always stumbled. When she came across a rule that didn't fit into her life. But for the last 7.5 months, and even before that, back when she still had to report to Mr. Wright, Aya had followed the rules, even when they seemed ridiculous. Like the curfew that was so crazy it almost dared her to violate it. The year Aya was turning 18 years old, she was supposed to be in the house by 6 o'clock on weekdays and by 8 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays. Now, with probation over, she no longer had a court-ordered curfew, but Miriam still insisted that Aya be home as early as possible. 8 o'clock, Sunday through Thursday. The weekends were negotiable, but not by much. Every now and again, Aya would push, though lightly. She would mumble something about wanting to hang out, just hang out. And Miriam would not only remind Aya of the girl's own troubled history, just hanging out, but she'd also make a cryptic reference to Aya's father. Something about how he had learned the hard way about running the streets. "What do you mean, Mama?" Aya wanted to know. She wanted to know because these vague remarks Miriam made from time to time about Aya's father countered the image she had in her head of the war hero. Miriam never explained, though, beyond remarking with an almost imperceptible measure of sarcasm that he didn't spend the whole of his life in the military, and when he was out in these streets, he didn't always make the right choices. Once, during a stilted 4-sentence conversation about Aya's father, Miriam wandered out of the room muttering something about the need to always buck authority. What was she talking about? Aya wanted to know. But there was no way to know. Not from this woman, not from her mother. Besides, the last thing Aya wanted to do was upset anyone, which is why she always let her questioning go. She usually made it home even before dusk settled in, and she concentrated on her schoolwork. Because her grades were so high, she told her mother that she hoped to get a scholarship for graduate school. "To study what?" Miriam asked one morning as she made herself a cup of coffee. "Psychology, I think," Aya answered matter-of-factly. "I want to understand people so I can help them." Miriam had just looked at her daughter and nodded. She said nothing. Aya had looked at her mother that day, waiting for engagement, but it didn't come. And when it didn't come, it never came. She slipped, Aya did, back into her mind, back into her plan of finishing school, getting a job, moving out, doing her own thing, really living her life. For now, though, she'd have to tolerate this life, as constrained, unclear, and frustrating as it was. There was one thing Aya found completely unfair, nearly intolerable. It was the mandate about Dawn. She was not to hang out with her. As if it had been Dawn who was the bad influence. As if it had been Dawn and not Aya who would fight anybody, try anything, go anywhere. As if it had been Dawn and not Aya who had mastered the art of lying. Dawn and not Aya, who had the courage to get all hooked up and make fake IDs and go out to the clubs and flirt with men twice their age. Dawn would never have done any of that. If anything, Dawn was the one who would say, "Aya, let's just go to the movies, girl. I don't want to get caught up in all this mess." and it was Aya who would push and cajole her friend until the girl gave in, which she always did eventually. They would leave Aya's house and tell Miriam that they were going to the movies and to sleep at Dawn's. Miriam didn't know that Dawn's mother, the only parent in the home, worked nights. Miriam would say, as she said every time, "Okay, all right, I'll give you a ring before I go to sleep to say good night." "Okay, Mom," Aya would say, before bouncing out of her house with a smirk. She knew Miriam would call by 10:30, and sometimes when she called, they would have the television turned up as though they were watching a show. Sometimes they pretended to be sleeping. But by 11 p.m., the girls were dressed and made up. Their nails were done, their hair was done, and they were heading out to the club. And despite the fact that when they started doing this, neither girl was yet 16, makeup, fake out-of-state IDs, and especially Aya's confidence, convinced people that they were 25. They would get in the club and begin dancing immediately. Even though they had to start out dancing together, in almost no time a couple of brothers would come over and join them, and Aya, dancing and winding sexy, would always talk men into buying them drinks. On the night that Aya still replayed in her head, there had been these two men, friends, who were such excellent dancers, so generous, so fine and sweet, that when one of them asked Aya to come back with them to their apartment, she had agreed to it. And then she convinced Dawn to come along, that it was going to be fun. Together, the girls went with the men to a building that was just over the 138th Street Bridge. The men lived in a loft at the edge of the Bronx, where Aya imagined she would be taken to the edge of her fantasy, her secret Prince Charming fantasy. It was the one she had had for the whole of her life, the one that had her being claimed by somebody, claimed and cherished. This dream, this hope, coursed through Aya like a sudden and brilliant and convincing hallucination when she looked at Robert, the man who had been talking to her, dancing with her, buying her drinks, and making her laugh. And Robert, who was carved, beautiful, deep brown, thick and shining. Aya thought maybe this was him, the man who would love and take care of her, the man who would make her feel as though she belonged somewhere. There was something in the way he stared all the way into her when they danced, the way his hand confidently touched her hip as they moved together in the beat and dark. He opened her up there, on the dance floor where everybody became their own universe, and everybody became the same universe. She still remembered thinking how it seemed crazy to want this man in an instant. But then again, you had to meet the great love of your life somewhere, somehow, didn't you? At the club that night, Robert was the one who suggested it. He said he wanted to get out of there, to go back to his place where they could really talk and get to know one another, away from crowds and noise. Robert said he didn't want Aya to be just some girl he danced with in a club who disappeared after the music ended. And it was after this plea, this sweet plea that made Aya feel desired and hungered for, that she took Dawn into the ladies' room and said, "Come on, let's go with them. We'll have fun. They're really nice. Plus, it's perfect timing since your mother's in Atlantic City for the weekend. Come on." At first, Dawn had said, "No, Aya, we don't know them. I don't want to." She'd said, "Aya, I don't want to do this. Please, please." But Aya had pushed her. Aya had told her not to be so damn afraid of everybody. "They're so nice," she'd whined, "and so cute. And they bought all the drinks. This is fun. We're having fun, so come on, come on." Aya stared into Dawn's immobile expression. "Listen, this feels like it's going to be fine. There's something about Robert, and I'm sure if you talk to Marcus more, you'll see he's sweet too. Plus, we're together.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.